welcome back to NetApp On Air Snapshot. As always, my name is Nick Howell. I'll be your host for today's festivities and beyond. We got another packed show for you today. We got a lot of announcements to break through and go over and analyze today, and I've got a good roster of guests and experts and A-team members and partner. Everybody's coming in today. As you guys have just seen on the today's keynote, there's a lot to break down. There's a lot to go over. However, I am not without my own announcements today. To start things off, if you are here at the show, you have the ability to pick up something that is long coveted amongst the NetApp community. And it is the brand new version of the Hardware Universe poster. Yay! We have been waiting for this for a few years throughout COVID. If you're here at the show, come by the expo. You can pick one up. If you're not here at the show, you can go onto the gear store in the coming days and for a few bucks have one mailed to you. So Hardware Universe posters are back with all of the new and updated gear, including the stuff you saw announced today. We're very excited about that. We worked on that all summer for you guys. We hope you really enjoy them. I know as someone that used to have one hanging up in my cubicle, I'm very excited to have that back. We also have joining the show today the all-new ASA, as announced, A90 bezel with us here. Yes, it does have the light up on it as well. And we have many more that we'll be showcasing throughout the show today as well. We got a lot of extra noise going on in the show today, so bear with us. We're working through some of that stuff, but we have got you guys right here for the next 2 hours as we go through everything that was announced in the keynote today. Now, first up, a little bit of housekeeping. We want to make sure that you can keep up with all things NetApp as we go forward, and the best way to do that is in our Discord community. So head over to discord.gg/NetApp, or just go to netappdiscord.com, click the little join button, and you can find your way into there. We're giving away some special flair, a little roll icon that shows that you are an Insight 2024 attendee. We've got special chat channels in there for you to come and join us, see what everybody's saying, what their thoughts were on the keynotes, some of the announcements, all of that good stuff. So make sure you come and join us over in Discord. We've got lots of other stuff going on throughout the week this week and beyond as well. Let's see. Lots of stuff to go over today, so why don't we get things started? Our first guest today is a very long-time friend of mine, confidant, a colleague, and a longtime A-team member. I want to introduce you to Mr. Jason Benedicic.
Good morning, Nick.
Thank you so much for joining us today, man.
Thanks. It's great to be here. Back in Vegas, first time since 2019.
Wow.
So it's been a few years now. We've been to some other events together, but being back at Insight, really special.
Yeah.
Friends, family, technology, and my favorite thing today, hardware.
Hardware.
Yeah.
We got to talk about hardware. We had a lot of conversations around AI. You've got an extended segment here with me, so we're going to get into a lot of this stuff today, first thing in the morning. You brought it up, hardware. Let's run down what we've kind of the last 2 years, and we're going to talk about this more with the great Mr. Chris Lueth next. He's going to be coming back and joining the show.
Perfect, right.
But I really want to hear your thoughts on just the last 2 years. So the introduction of C-Series, the reemergence of the ASA, then that was all both in 2023.
Yeah.
Then this May we came back with the all-new A7, the A-Series AFFs, and now we have an updated ASA that's using that same hardware platform as the updated A-Series. As the portfolio sits today, and I didn't even mention the new storage grid stuff, right? There's so many other things to go over, but the portfolio has not been this up to date and this refreshed in as long as I can remember, all at once, like just in the last 2 years.
Yeah, it's a really good position to be in, right? So we've got more demand for on-premises storage the last few years as well, so I think you're moving with that trend. The way that things have worked, we've had a decade or more of people moving workloads to the cloud, and there was a lot of focus on the cloud, and that's okay. But now we're moving into an era of workloads that don't need just the cloud. We've got AI, and there was a big topic on AI yesterday, lots of talking points. But as you move those kind of workloads, or as you start to build out those kind of workloads, you need performant, low latency, storage that is where your apps are, where your data is, where your GPUs are. You can't always get those in the cloud. You might have to, you might want to build your training infrastructure on premises, and you need all sorts of different storage for that. And NetApp has been quietly chipping away, building out the range. They took the time on things. So let's start with the C-Series, right? you weren't first to market in that area. There are other people doing more on QLC and everything else, but some of those early solutions weren't really ready or didn't understand what the longevity, that's the word I was thinking, the longevity of QLC would be, right? So there was a lot of concern at the start, but you took the time to look into it, to do it properly, to build that out. And the C-Series has got a really good sweet spot, hits of that, performance is, it's there for, it's on par with your spinning disk performance, but much higher density. You get better latency than that. And that's a huge segment because there's still people that need that for cold data, for, backups and all those other things as well. Also, tiering, because we've got, ONTAP S3 now, and that's coming just the last few years, that's been there as well.
Where does the cloud come into this picture, though? Because I think that's one of the big talking points is it's great that we have all of that stuff, and it is so versatile across capacity, performance, and any other vectors like that. But then, as you were saying, you introduce cloud that gives you sort of instant access to some of these pay-as-you-go resources that you don't really have to sit in line for, waiting for them to be shipped and things like that. It's literally you click a button, and all of a sudden you've got a GPU and CPU instance that you can throw a bunch of compute at. How has that changed the way that people buy storage, let's just say over the last 5 or 6 years, specifically around storage? Because I think that moving the compute to the cloud has influenced and frankly influenced how people are deterring buying physical systems on-prem. But I think we're starting to see a little bit of the downslope. We're seeing from the analyst community that we might be in that downturn a little bit.
Yeah, okay, well, for that, we want to go back a little bit as well. And you look at some of the origins of the cloud, some of the original times. If you look at how hardware was in the origin of the cloud, a decade or so ago, a bit longer, I would say, and I'm not 100% on this, but let's say the average core count would be 4 to 6 in a CPU.
Sure.
We have CPUs now with 128 cores, some of the AMD ones. You've got
right.
ARM have got massive core density. Intel, massive core density again. So we've had a big change that has led to some of that downturn. I think it was not necessarily a downturn, but some of that changing behavior.
Yeah.
Right. But so when I talk about this with customers about the cloud, the important thing is speed to market. Right, and so there are those trade-offs. If I've got a really tight deadline, I've got a new project, I'm not sure where it's going to go, I might not want to make a huge investment. I might just want to say, okay, I'm going to do this proof of concept. I'm going to see if this works out. I'm going to go get some CPU, I'm going to get some GPU, I'm going to get some storage in the cloud. It's nice and simple. Credit card, quick, up and running, no problems, right? That's great. That's where it comes in. Innovation, speed, bursting, right? Oh, I don't have time to wait for some more storage to arrive. I'll just use some in the cloud. And that's where NetApp have had the real leading offering here, in that it's just on tap everywhere.
Yeah.
And so I need
that sounds familiar.
Yeah. It's like, okay, I can get that. I can get some data from my on-premises into the cloud. I can work with it, whether it's a new AI project, whether it's any other project, or I'm doing EDA workloads and I've got a new project spin up and I need just some more capacity.
Yeah.
But it's only a short-term thing. I'm not going to go and buy some more hardware.
Yeah, the beauty of ONTAP, since you brought that up, is like it moves. It doesn't matter what the underlying platform is a lot of the times. It can be in the cloud, it can be at the edge, it can be on-prem, or all of the above. And the beauty is like all of the flex and snap words still work no matter where you are. The same commands still work.
Yeah.
Everywhere you are, most of the same GUIs, especially Blue XP as a sort of universal control plane of sorts, that allows you to access and manage all of those things and deploy additional resources. The reason I asked the question before, though, was like even AWS recently came out and said that they're seeing people a sort of repatriation effort for a lot of workloads. And I'm wondering if you're seeing that. Based in the UK, are you seeing that throughout Europe? Like, where are you seeing the trends happen when it comes to things like, well, we tried that cloud thing, it was cool, but we still kind of want to do some of it on-prem? Yeah,
there's a few different angles to this. So in Europe, we do see more of it. Definitely a lot more sort of private or hybrid data centers for sovereignty. So the European Union have a lot of stricter rules on data governance, and we have GDPR and those things. And financial sector, data has to stay in the same region, and you can't always get. The cloud isn't in every single country.
Yeah.
No, so sometimes we're seeing it because of those concerns. And I think everyone's heard the story of, is it 37 Signals, DHH?
Yes.
And how they moved out of the cloud for cost savings. The thing is that the economy's changed, right? Since the post-pandemic economy is very different. People are thinking a lot more cost-consciously.
Yeah.
So I see people starting to optimize their workloads and move things around where it makes the most financial sense. So like I was saying before, where we had, the average core count, 6, 8, whatever, I can go and buy some servers with large number of cores. The hardware is not the only change as well. The software's changed. Platform engineering has taken place, and there are more platforms out there. Kubernetes has helped people to build platforms across multiple locations. And there's a lot more tooling out there. So I can build something a bit easier than, say, 10, 15 years ago when we had all of our vExperts and all of us out there building FlexPods and other things that took, for their time, a reasonable amount of time to build.
Yeah.
So you've got, an ease of use there now that we didn't have before. You've got access to higher density hardware, lower footprints. That's exactly the same with storage. NetApp said this as well, right? So you've got lower rack density, higher storage footprint, less power consumption. So we've got an appealing set of options for us to say, well, I know this workload isn't going to change. It's going to be data heavy. It's not going to burst. I could run it on premises cheaper, and I'm cost conscious about that.
Yeah.
So those are the kinds of things we're seeing.
I feel like we could talk about that almost in a theoretical sense for an hour. I think there's so many different angles to attack that sort of to cloud or not to cloud sort of conversation. There's so many moving parts to it, and I feel like that's something companies are still struggling with to an extent. And I think it's up to the cloud providers to prove that value and provide that value to be able to drive the customers to the cloud, but at the same time not drive them away at the same time. So I look at it that way. I want to go back to the hardware for a second because we did recap the C-Series and the ASA last year, and then we got A-Series and now ASA for this year. We've got them all here on the desk for you guys so you can see them. So we've got the new ASA bezel, the A90 right here. This is the new A-Series that you heard about back in May. And Jason over there has the new FAS. It's a bit of a gray. It's chrome almost. Not quite chrome, but it's like a very, very silver gray kind of color. Looks nice. These all look really sharp. Yes, they all do light up officially. So that's not to be worried about. Do you have a favorite? What stands out to you? Are you more Darth Vader or are you more Stormtrooper?
I'm partial to the Darth Vader. I'm really partial to the black. I want to see like an Enterprise Edition ARGB upgraded.
Yeah.
I don't mind if that's an extra SKU.
I think we're long overdue to introduce RGB into server racks.
The data center has been needing RGB for a long time.
Like, you can have your immersion cooling and you can have your water cooling, mineral oil cooling and all that stuff. I want some RGB fans. Yeah. I want some color in my racks.
It gives you at least 10,000 more IOPS.
Exactly. One of the big things that we got a big surprise at the end of the keynote today, so I hope you guys are paying attention. If you missed it, go back and watch Krish's segment at the end of the keynote because he brought up something that we've been sort of fairy tale unicorns and rainbows thinking about for a long time. And in full disclosure, it was kind of even gate kept from us because it was such a big deal. They wanted to make sure they got it right. Disaggregated storage systems.
Yeah.
Your thoughts?
Oh, man. We have been talking about this since I joined the A-Team, so probably 2016, 2017, maybe before that. It's one of those things. It's a huge game changer. We've seen other people in the market do it, but I reminisce back to how NetApp were very thoughtful about their move from spinning disks to hybrid to all flash. They were very thoughtful about the move and the way they wanted to do it, and I think they've probably spent that same amount of time being thoughtful and coming up with something that's really going to work.
Yeah.
So I know it's taken a long time, but I am absolutely amazed to see that it's finally here. And there were some really good discussions there. The opportunities sound endless.
Yeah. I can remember times back in, let's say, when I was at VTME, we would sit around and go, wouldn't it be cool if we could just run VMs on a storage system? Like, we've got all this CPU overhead and all this memory to use. Like, can we just stick like 2 or 3 management VMs on this thing and just let it have direct bus level access to the storage.
Yeah, and I remember having these conversations even about some of the tools that we used to run, right? So the VASA provider or the VSC or whatever else. Like, you got those things. It's like, well, actually, they really are part of the storage. They could just run there. That'd be great. And you kind of got that. This opens up a whole opportunity for all sorts of different things.
Well, we see this a lot in the consumer market, too, if we want to draw any kind of parallel to it. So if you look at I won't name names or anybody, but a lot of the home NAS, consumer home NAS, are sort of multifunction, where you can run containers, you can run VMs, some of the free open source stuff out there, like an Unraid, I'll throw that one out there, right?
Yeah.
Like it's multi-platform. That starts opening up, are we going to be able to run a Docker instance on a NetApp storage system? Like, we don't know this. I'm not claiming that, but that's where my mind goes.
Yeah, my mind goes there as well, right? Especially with all the discussion the last couple of days around AI and how important data is to AI. You know, if I could run some containers, anything like that, where I've got maybe some analytics going on, you know, the possibilities. We used to run different virtual machines for virus scanning, for example. Right now, you've got that being so close, more real time. There's that.
I think about things. Could you containerize the individual pieces and parts of ONTAP and spin them up on demand? Like I
don't know.
Listen, Jason and I are speculating. None of this is announced. Don't take it verbatim. But I look at this as this is a huge inflection point. Not for hardware, but for ONTAP specifically.
Yeah.
And it really excites me around some of the things that we could potentially see come out of ONTAP in the future, regardless of what hardware or what cloud it's running in.
Yeah, and I think that's something that has come through the last, 5 or 6 years of working with the hyperscalers on the first-party solutions. The first-party solutions have really changed the way that the ONTAP team and everyone works on engineering. They've been solving problems in completely different ways because they're not using the hardware appliances in the cloud. They're using someone else's hardware, and they're doing it in different ways, and they're coming up with all these new solutions. And I think that all of that combined learning is now coming back, and that's what we kind of saw at the end of the keynote there, is it's like, actually, we've learned a lot by building all of these other solutions. How can we now make our traditional stuff even better by taking that learning and putting it back in?
Isn't it funny how this works, where it's almost cyclical, where we learned how to do all these things in the 2000s, but then VMware went and showed us how to do it all in this sort of virtual container type of fashion. But then they're like, ooh, we can do that too. So we do break stuff out like that. But then the cloud tries to adapt all the things you would do on-prem and make you comfortable so that you'll come do it in the cloud. And then we're building storage systems and compute systems now on-prem that are doing all the things that the cloud enables you to do, so you'll come back to... It's such a up and down kind of ride. If you look at like the last 20 years, I get so much deja vu over the 4 or 5 big waves that we've been through in the last 20 years.
Yeah, technology is very cyclical. It really is. I mean, even if you think of the funniest kind of, we had mainframes, then we didn't. We had virtual desktops and like thin clients and stuff.
Like
then we
terminal
didn't.
servers.
Yeah, terminal servers. Yeah. And we kind of go. And there's also the insourcing, outsourcing is a cycle in technology as well. That happens a lot. So yeah, it is very cyclical, and it moves in waves where innovation happens, and those innovations that creates those waves and changes. And the hyperscalers have been a huge innovation point for the last decade, and then hardware's been taking a real, it took a bit of a backseat. Especially with when there was the top of the hype cycle for cloud, and a lot of people weren't buying hardware. But in the background, the research has never stopped.
Yeah.
So things are still moving. And I talk about, you've got Compute Express Link, which is a technology that helps to build out like rack scale fabrics of compute and memory. You've got advancements in chiplet design. You've got more system on chip stuff. So the things that Apple do, ARM, are leading the way. NVIDIA and everything they're doing around DPUs, and it's just, we've got this whole smelting pot of amazing changes that are coming together, and I'm really excited for what the next decade brings when it comes to not just software but hardware as well, and how I can just see us having this, what we really wanted, that ideal hybrid landscape where your workloads can be anywhere, where they're best suited, and NetApp's building that.
All right, so couple more things I wanted to chat with you about. Autonomous ransomware protection. We see it massively here in the U.S. Are you seeing the same thing over in the U.K. and on the EU side?
So as data has become more valuable, the number of people looking to attack it is increasing, and that's a worldwide problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, we see that. I mean, you can only go back to a few years ago when the big WannaCry attack, one of the biggest, hardest hit people was the UK NHS, right? So, yeah, we see it too. And everybody's concerned. Everybody needs... and it doesn't even have to be just ransomware. It can be from software issues. Look at what happened with CrowdStrike
right.
A few months ago now.
July, I think.
Yeah, the ability to detect unexpected changes natively, to protect against it, to snapshot.
Yep.
Right, okay, lock it. I don't want anyone to do it. I don't want an admin, nothing. No one can change that. This doesn't smell right. I'm going to protect you from it.
So, Gaggan threw out some numbers that said 100. They did it with a third-party agency. 100% precision and 99% recall. So, on previous shows and launches that we've done over the last year or so, we've talked about ARP and ARP AI and how precise they have really dialed it in, right? The ability for any sort of anomaly to be detected is just instant snapshot, just in case.
Yeah.
It costs you 150 megabytes, so what? You analyze it, it wasn't really anything you can get rid of. The fact that they're getting 100% precision, that's crazy to me that the AI has, the ML models have gotten that precise to be able to be predictive about it, to the point where it's saving everybody. I've turned on autonomous random protection on my system at home, and it takes about 30 to 45 days for it to really learn the behavior of the system and what it's actually doing and its uses and cycles and things. But I haven't obviously gotten a ransomware attack yet, or I would be making videos about that. But I guess I'm curious, where do you see that really being a game changer for companies? Because I haven't really had an experience myself with it, but I can see the value.
It's a game changer in that you no longer have to be reactive.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, at the moment, most companies and most solutions out there are, you've got backups, you've got protected backups. So there's a lot of the big players out there, they'll do immutable backups for you and things like that. But they're a reactive thing. You can only go back to them because you know something happened and you're going to have to react to it. So you've already hit the worst. Whereas ARP is more, it's almost proactive because it's so close, right? It's detecting those things with such precision so quickly that it's almost proactive in its response, that it's going, okay, this could be bad, I'm going to protect you from it. And people that get hit with ransomware issues lose millions of dollars an hour. You know, it's the CrowdStrike thing, that not ransomware, but still, it's a good example of how much people were losing. Then there's another one. We're in Vegas. There was one of the casino chains had a big thing, right?
Yep.
And for somewhere where
multiple of them have,
yeah. For something like that, where you've got literally millions of dollars an hour flowing through the casinos, and you can't take the risks.
It was kind of eerie last year walking through some of the casinos because multiple sites were hit.
Yeah.
It was eerie walking through with all the slot machines turned off because those are 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
You never walk through that, but all of them are off. All of the kiosks are turned off. It's post-apocalyptic in a way when you think about it. So to the way that we've fine-tuned this ARP stuff now, if you have an ONTAP system, turn it on for all of your volumes by default. I know that's not a setting that we don't like to turn stuff on by default like that, but that's one that I will personally recommend for anything that has any data that's of any value to you as an admin, as a user. It's about as least disruptive as I could describe, and at the same time, it's going to save your backside one of these days because it's going to detect something and take a snapshot. And worst case, you have to go in and delete a snapshot. Worst case, you have to go in and recover a snapshot. but you've just saved your company days, if not months, of recovery time and potentially millions of dollars, both in recovery time and lost revenue that you've lost during the whole process. Jason, I'll give you one last thing before we get you out of here. If you could give any one suggestion to NetApp engineering, if you could get in their ear and say one, because you and I have been doing this a long time, right? We've been friends for a long time. We've had lots of healthy, heated discussions.
Yeah.
What's one piece of advice you would give to NetApp engineering to do next?
I would start looking at the way that the markets are shifting. So we've got a huge, since Apple made the change to ARM, with their Apple
M1
Silicon,
stuff.
the M1
Apple Silicon, yeah.
Apple Silicon, right? So as they move to Apple Silicon, Microsoft have moved over. So the Snapdragon stuff is doing really well. Graviton, amazing. Google Cloud have it. Microsoft Azure have it. Everybody is building these system on chips, right? And there is a huge amount of innovation in that space. So if I could do one thing, I would just look at the options. I'd look at all the options that are out there and say, could we start building a system on a chip that's not just CPU, it's got some GPU, it's got some AI ML cores, it's got, because that's the thing, and it doesn't just have to be an architecture thing. It's not x86 versus IH64. It's the whole, the industry is changing, so there's chiplet design that you can, in the future, you're going to be able to say, I want 10 cores of CPU, I want 20 cores of GPU, I want half a dozen ML engines, and I want this, that, and the other. Custom built storage processor that's, and take that with computational storage disks as well, so they offload some of the work directly to the disks. Kind of that sort of thing together, that's like the utopia of, I can do everything.
So you want to see ARM, basically, a system on a chip kind of designs.
Yeah. It doesn't have to be that architecture itself, but that kind of design. And Intel are doing some great work on this as well, where they're bringing in, and there's a huge amount of AI offloading in the new Xeon family, for example.
Well, ironically, the hardware part would be pretty trivial.
Yeah.
I think where the lion's share of the workload comes in would be with ONTAP, sort of kind of ONTAP ARM version, if you will, right?
And just being able to be flexible and move around that as well, and say, okay, there are these different hardware platforms out there. There's these different things we want to take care of. And like I said before, Compute Express Link or those things, being able to be reactive and move very quickly with the market, that might take some change in the way that ONTAP is built.
Yeah, definitely. Well, Jason, thank you very much for taking some extra time with me to kick things off today.
It's been an absolute pleasure, Nick.
Yeah, we've got a lot of stuff to go over today, so if you don't mind, I got to jump over to my next guest.
Yeah, thanks very much, pal.
Take care, man. All right, guys, we're just getting started. Thanks to Jason for joining me here. We did a lot of talk about a lot of things to go over there at the beginning. Again, just a reminder, they're back. Hardware Universe posters. If you are here at the show, you can pick them up. You can pick up your copy here in the expo. If you're not at the show, you absolutely can also go to the merch store, the NetApp gear store, throw in a couple of bucks, and you can get one mailed to you directly. So, my next guest, we want to focus a little bit more on the hardware. We had him on the show back in May when we were launching the new A-Series AFFs, and we couldn't have a show talking about hardware without bringing this guy on. You all know him. You all love him. He's a friend of the community, a friend of the show here. My good buddy, Mr. Chris Lueth. Chris, thanks for joining the show, man. Really appreciate you having you here.
Nick, it's great to see you.
I brought all your friends.
Well, the thing is, there's something about you. Every time we get together, we're releasing new hardware.
Yes.
So I kind of like that aspect of our relationship.
Over the last 2 years, I was just talking about with Jason, if you go back to 23, we had the C-Series, we had the ASA. This year we had the new A-Series, and now new ASAs. We've had 2 years of lots of hardware launches, and I'm curious, have you seen 2 years from NetApp like that in your tenure at NetApp?
Oh, well, let's be fair. It's 2 years on a calendar, but it's like 15 years of activity.
Sure.
It's been super intense, but, if you look at the stock price, there's a reason why it doubled up. And that's because of all the stuff we've been able to do and innovate over the past 2 years. So, we're on steroids right now, and I can't talk futures, but I can say we're not letting up.
Oh, yeah. We're not going anywhere. We're not done just yet. So now that it's out there, is the with the ASA platform, can you tell us the difference between what the A series and the ASA is, as far as it's not just about limiting protocols or turning things off or anything like that? Like, what is the fundamental difference between those two, the A series and the ASA?
So, you hate to oversimplify, but yeah, you turn off some of the things customers don't need.
Right.
If you don't need NAS, and NAS is innocuous. If you don't configure it, it's basically not there.
Yeah.
But in the world of SAN, there are security concerns.
Yep.
If you don't need something, just don't put it on the box. Don't have it capable, because people do crazy things. Somebody with admin capabilities, hey, what's this NFS?
Yeah.
So anyway, not having it is peace of mind for customers. That's primary. Well, then the other aspect is, if you're not using certain capabilities, why pay for them?
Exactly.
So you get a better price point on a system like
Well, I mean, you go
ASA.
buy a car, nobody wants to pay for those options that you're never going to use, right? So I feel the same way about my storage systems. I love the fact that we've got systems now where you can just not pay for the things that you don't intend to use, and you've got that option when you're buying something.
Yeah.
Obviously, we've still got the unified platforms, the A series, right? The fast systems are still out there, C series.
There's two sides. You give the customer a lot of choices.
Yep.
Sometimes it adds complexity. But on the other hand, it lets customers pick exactly what it is they need in a storage system. Now, going into some other differences with the ASA platform.
Yep.
The version we released last year is really on tap. NAS turned off, better price point. But, admins, when they were setting up storage for SAN, needed to know some strange sounding words like aggregates, RAID groups, and different things. SAN admins speak LUN. LUN is one word vocabulary.
Right.
So with the new ASA offering that we're announcing today, we've actually simplified setup to the point. At the keynote just now, they had a complete novice provision a LUN to serve data in like 21 seconds.
Yeah.
So it's drastically simplified and is focused on the language that SAN admins understand.
Yeah, and as long as you've got your initiator, your identifier from whatever workload you're attaching that LUN to, you just drop it in the box and you're done, right? You tell it how big you want it to be.
Yeah, and in fact, if you're at Insight this year, there's a ASA setup challenge over here to see how fast you can actually do it.
We can kind of hear them. They're playing a video game back there. It's like almost like The Price is Right or some kind of game, but they're having a challenge where you can actually try and set up an ASA the fastest or provision storage to a workload the fastest. It's exciting. It's fun. I love little games and challenges like that. I asked Jason, our previous guest, the same question, and I want to ask you, where do you see things at right? Are you happy with where we're at right now with the portfolio that we have? I don't remember a time personally where I felt this fulfilled with a hardware portfolio at NetApp in over 10, 12 years that I've been here. It seems pretty complete. I'm not sure that there's one thing left to do, but we'll talk about that another time. But it feels in a pretty good spot right now.
Yes. I'm pretty proud of what we've been able to do. But yeah, you're right. We will have another rendezvous coming up. We're not satisfied.
No.
We're not going to.
We're never resting on our laurels in that sense.
And then, it's a vicious cycle. You don't get like a 3-month sabbatical. You just jump right back in and start working on next generation hardware. And one of the great things with these platforms, if you look at the AFF A series we launched in May and now this new ASA offering, I was thinking of a good analogy, and I came up with, when a fighter jet is in a dogfight, and it needs like a big burst of speed for whatever reason, it puts on the afterburner. I tell you what, this new hardware really put on the afterburner for us over the competition.
Nice.
I mean, I would love to be a fly on the wall in some of their boardrooms. What the hell happened? But anyway, now that customers have seen this new offering and, what we're going to be doing, in the future, we want that kind of feedback loop because we want to hear what customers are, how close it meets their needs or, what they would do differently.
Yeah.
So we want to get that kind of feedback. So for all you customers out there, put your thinking caps on. Look at this new platform. Look at the, platforms we release in, the upcoming future. And give us that feedback. That's how we build these platforms that meet customers' expectations because customers actually influence the design.
So one last thing I want to go over with you real quick is like, let's get into some geeky hardware details for a second. So you brought up that it's taken many, many years to get to this point, and I think people often overlook, or they're just not close enough to what happened with supply chain during COVID and how bad that set us back from as being a manufacturer of these kinds of goods, and particularly like where a lot of this stuff can be sourced from. So have we gotten to a point now where when we talk about this new ASA that's announced, are we in alignment with the sort of hardware that's crisscross? Is it the same hardware guts and internals in the A series that are in the ASA? Are we pretty platform similar when it comes to that, or is there anything unique about the ASA from base level hardware stuff?
Exactly the same hardware.
Exactly the same. Exactly. That's what I wanted to clarify.
Everything that you loved about the AFFA series we announced in May, the PCIe Gen 5, the onboard quick assist technology, QAT, storage offload efficiency engine. You get tremendous compression at no performance penalty, faster memory, DDR5, the doubling the slot density, the adapter service separately from the node itself. In the case of the A1K, the node services out the front. Just, serviceability, all that carries over seamlessly. And we are going to see some SAN deployments that use iSCSI, but we're also going to see NVMe over Fibre Channel.
Yep.
We're going to see NVMe over TCP. Those are SAN workloads. And we have that new adapter as well. Currently it supports up to 200 gig speeds, but with the future firmware release, we'll unlock 400 gig Ethernet speed and security offload.
That's crazy to me.
Yeah, so all that stuff that was so fun to talk about when I was here in May carries over to the ASA.
There is a common misconception that block is just Fibre Channel. And I think a lot of people, like iSCSI is still hanging around, is still doing well. But I think people are sleeping on NVMe over Fibre, NVMe over TCP as well. That's probably one of the things that I'm most excited about, specifically existing Ethernet infrastructure and how easily and modularly upgradable it is, and to that extent, without really having to rip out entire structured cabling setups and stuff like that. So as long as you're running like Cat 6 or you've got your twin-ax, big copper, or fiber infrastructure set up already, like unplug one, pull the switch, put the switch in, plug it back in, 9 times out of 10, you're probably going to be good to go. I think that's the biggest value of NVMe over TCP that I look at, even Fibre Channel to that matter as well. But reusing that existing Ethernet infrastructure is going to be huge. The last thing I wanted
to go for build on that. Yeah, you're on this tangent. I want to I want to ride your draft off of it. So when we first released NVMe over Fibre Channel, it's like raw. And the reason customers really were hesitant to adopt it, well, one, the OS vendors, were still catching up. But the other thing is it was a data migration. And that's, let's be blunt, that's a pain.
Yeah.
Copying your data to, from a LUN to a namespace. We made that simpler. We now, for some time now, we've done a data in place conversion from a LUN to a namespace.
Yep.
So that barrier's gone. But then once you make that leap, what are you getting? So you're getting almost double the number of IOPS at the same low latency point. You're talking half a millisecond.
A microsecond sometimes,
and you're doubling your IOP throughput. Like you said, no extra investment or anything. It's a compelling offer to make.
Yeah.
Back to you, Nick.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just to close it out, like if you're already on 25 or 40 gig Ethernet, like you have like that, you should absolutely prioritize looking at NVMe over TCP because it will be a game changer. If you're still on single gig or maybe just still hanging 10 gig around for your storage network and stuff, like think about looking at 25 and 40 because that could really, really be a game changer. Chris, anything else you want to say about the new ASA platforms or the new FAS that you have? That beautiful, I love that silver, almost chrome, shiny kind of bezel you got going on over there. Anything you want to say about the new hardware platforms that announced today? These are your babies.
So, we're seeing really great adoption for the platforms we launched in May just because of all the compelling reasons, all the customer design system.
Yeah.
So they love it. They're buying it. 2 years back, I was talking to a customer, and they were pounding, I want to buy this today. So it's doing really well. ASA versions of that platform announced today. We expect to see that same sort of ramp. But what we've seen with the ASA systems that we released last year, we go back to 2019 with ASA, right?
Yeah.
And it was a very slow ramp. With the approach last year, a better price point, all the things we did.
The ONTAP One licensing.
That was legacy platforms, if you will. But they're doing extremely well. We're doing competitive takeouts. Those are always fun.
Yep.
You get a little extra charge out of competitive takeout. But we're also knocking out some big wins against our competitors for net new. And we're even seeing, it's hard to unseat the Tier 1 SAN deployments. They're entrenched, if you will. So, but we're actually taking those out too. So it's the entire stack from entry level all the way up to like our A900. Now our new high-end ASA systems.
Right.
It's fun, no matter what the customer's needs are. And a lot of these customers have multiple locations, right? They have big data centers, obviously. They have edge locations. But it's nice running a consistent architecture across the board. You don't need a high-end system in a remote location. Go with the entry-level system. So you just got a full product offering, and that really helps these global enterprises.
I did just notice we had a question come in chat for you. So before you get out of here, I got to ask you at least one question from OG1. It says, can these new ASA models do active-active NVMe over TCP?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's fully active-active. Yes. I like
pretty much everything on these ASAs are active-active. Like the failover on, there is no real failure domain when I think about it in that way. Well, Chris, thank you so much for stopping by. Always great to have you on the show, man. Love geeking out over hardware with you, and this has been fantastic. We are definitely, I don't know, sometime in the near future, going to be getting back together for more information on some additional things.
I won't be able to sleep until then.
Yes.
Thanks, Nick.
Thanks, Chris. All right, guys, moving right along, we have got some more updates for you. We've got some more exciting guests, and we're going to keep on going. We're absolutely going to get through this. We've got to talk about cloud stuff. That's going to be the second half of the show today. We're going to go over everything that you heard Pravjit go over with Gen AI Toolkit, with GCNV, especially in Google Cloud. You're going to see a lot of that stuff discussed later this afternoon. We also needed to talk about, we got through some of the ARP stuff, but before we get to the cloud stuff, there was also something that was mentioned in the show today around ransomware and cybersecurity, cyber resiliency. And so I didn't think we could find anybody good. Let's see, who did we end up getting? Oh, we got somebody special to talk about that. I'm very excited to have her on the show. I've been looking forward to having her on the show for quite some time now. Miss Mignona Cote, our Chief Security Officer. Thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it.
Hi, Nick. I'm so excited to be here. I've been trying to meet you for 3 years. I watched your videos when I was interviewing for the job.
Yeah.
So
I think you sent me a Teams message when you first started. And said,
did. Yeah. Continuously.
So a lot of them were designed out of trying to explain NetApp to the layman in a way. That was really the idea, because it's really about trying to find ways to talk to users where they are. And so not everybody knows everything about ONTAP and all the little whiz-bang features of the storage systems. So that's really what the intention was behind that. I'm glad they were helpful.
Yeah, well, explain security to everyone so they can get it.
I will. I'd love to work with you on one of those. Yeah.
Okay.
We were just talking about autonomous ransomware protection and how that's been a game changer for us. I really wanted to talk to you in the sense of is there anything that we've done at NetApp, per se, internal? I know there's been some updated policy changes and things like that, but where have you seen the needle move, even internally at NetApp? What kind of changes have we made to really shore things up? Maybe some holes that we weren't thinking about or some gaps that we're missing?
Well, one thing, we're using NetApp's products, so that's pretty cool.
True.
I think one of the first things I did when I came in is I saw what we could use, is instantly started using Cloud Checker and Spot Security, and now focusing all our protection in the storage layer, which is very cool, because I can, we talk about peace of mind or getting to rest. So I know that our data is protected Now, having said that, I have to do a lot of other security controls in the company. So we still run the basic things. There's regulatory requirements that we have to meet, but more importantly, we want to protect ourselves, protect the company, the reputation, and I have product security, so I have to make sure our products that are developing all of those things are also being developed in a secured manner.
I want to ask you a question. Thank you for that. I want to ask you a question that's probably on every CIO and CISO's mind around the country. How are you dealing with generative AI and enabling workers to not only take advantage of it, but at the same time protect our IP and things like that? What is your approach? What are some of the things that maybe some lessons learned that we've done at NetApp of how we could accomplish both the enablement part and the protection?
So first of all, probably on the product side, you don't hear as much about it, but we have done, like many major companies, we have created a governance board where we make sure we're using generative AI correctly and securely. And with that, we also have joined a consortium with external companies so that we know what's happening in those companies. We're openly sharing on how we're going to protect and grow the use of generative AI. Now, what it has done for us, we actually now have just implemented the capability to have all of our security questions that we're asked answered for us through using generative AI. So we've done that in the security group for our policy management. So we're making our lives easier. Looking at NetApp and looking at what we're doing to protect storage. I mean, how cool is that?
Yeah.
We're making it easier to know what is the story behind the data. That is where the business decisions are made in companies. When I was watching the keynote today, the thing top of my mind is like, wait, with what we've got at NetApp, do we need so many other tools? We're simplifying life and our protection.
Yeah, and it really does hit the full stack of things when you start removing the need to have all of these disparate tools in your workflow and in your stack, and you can really simplify and unify things around a common ONTAP platform, or a platform like ONTAP. It really does super simplify things. I love the generative AI stuff that I use on a daily basis. I'm also, like, almost in a crazy, irrational way, scared that I'm going to put the wrong thing into ChatGPT and get in trouble. How would you coax users to look at generative AI more positively, or not be so scared to use it in their day-to-day workplaces? And we get the phishing emails all the time, and we get all these kinds of things, and every now and then it can be a little, oh no, I'm clicking the wrong thing. How can we not fearmonger so much about generative AI? I guess is the way I would think about it. What would be some of your tactics there?
I almost want to ask you a question back. Were you shy when you used your first cell phone?
Yes, I was. Yes, I was, because I had a pager.
Okay, well,
dating myself, but well. I look at a pager as sort of unidirectional. I can respond if I want to, which I think is why text messaging is so prevalent today. People pine for that. Yes and no. I think to an extent. I have not been bashful about using Gen AI, but I still have that little bug in my head of I have to sort of sanity check and make sure this is not something I shouldn't be putting in ChatGPT, because I'm intimately aware of what's IP and what could get in trouble.
You do have to sanity check. I've seen some material that's come out, and you can kind of, like, when people use it for writing, you can tell, well, I don't know that they write this well. Or sometimes you don't have the human element embedded. And we want to, when we use things, is to, I'm thinking about, when you create Gen AI for writing or something, have some emotion.
Yeah.
And so the emotion's not there. But let's talk about using it to, for form, when you're trying to find out data and the correlation of data and what that means. I always, kind of like you, double check everything. I still will look at a slide and add up the numbers. And so when I get the number back, I was like, well, is this real? So I do, as well, like you, do some sanity checks. The reason I asked the question about the cell phone, because it will get better.
Yeah.
And so we have to embrace it, use it, and help drive it to get better. And that's my philosophy, is let's use it, let's grow it. As security people, you have a group of people that hold development back. I was like, no, let's instead be the ones who help push it forward. And with that, look at and like you, we've got to build confidence with you, the developers of it, and confidence with me. It only happens by all of us grouping together and pushing it forward. But yes, I have a little bit of that skepticism as well.
And I know that especially as a hardware manufacturer and a software developer all in one, as we are at NetApp with many software products, many things, we have tons of source code, 30 years of legacy, all of this data that we have to and IP that we have to protect. And I look at it as we have to stay on top of all of that stuff. For other companies that are out there doing that, is there any lessons learned with how we've implemented the way that we do it that maybe you could give to them that they could take on board of what they should look at doing first?
Well, my first advice to them is look at what you're doing that you wish you did not have to do.
Yeah, that's a good way to do it. Yep.
Yes, and then throw it off and let the AI build your models for it, and then use generative AI to make it easier for you and simplify it. So that's what we did. We sat there and looked at how can we see threats, how can we see what's bad happening in our environment, and we're using it for that. Because now, and we're seeing a lot of things that I didn't see out there, and I'm so grateful. We're protecting ourselves from what I'm seeing, and we're able to do that with this technology.
Yeah. I think that's fantastic. I heard a little story that you used to be a hacker. Is that true?
Oh my gosh! How did you hear that?
Little birdie told me. Tell us some of your background. How did you find yourself at NetApp?
Well, so I always had to thrill the hunt, and started off as an audit person, but I couldn't just go ask questions. I had to log on and see what I could do, and so I was sitting in a hotel room in Hong Kong and looking at a financial system. I'm going to protect the company's name. And I had the Oracle 8i book. And someone said, if you look at S&P, you could typically break into a company. So I did connect, and I put GL/GL.
Yeah.
Well, I got in. Then I'm over in France working, and I learned about the tool called John the Ripper. So I'd run it, crack passwords, and then the president of the company I was at that point said, hey, see if you could walk in and what you can get to physically. So, yeah, I've got to do it, but legally, and it was fun. It's so fun to just find the way in.
Yeah. I think as a systems admin early in my career, I had the most egregious thing I ever did was hack into our own SQL servers with quick SQL injections just because somebody forgot the instance password or something. But I look at it as I think there's an art form to it, the ability to do that kind of stuff, and I think it informs how a lot of those people can become really good CISOs, really good security people, to stay on top of trends, to stay on top of anything, be in the right bulletin boards, be in the right RSS feeds and things like that to know when there's new risks coming down. And I don't think people pay enough attention to that stuff, so I depend on them to really, I subscribe to certain blogs to stay on top of those things as much as I can.
I think it's important to have critical thinking. Now, I know the entire security organization is really tired of me hearing about that, but to this day, 3 years, they still get questions when they send me their weekly updates. The objective is to think about, well, what's the implication here? Where did this come from? The root cause, why did it happen? And why did it happen before that? And so we've been able to trace back certain data points to many years ago, which if we would have known years ago what we would be looking for 8 years forward, we would have been protected in a stronger way. So we've got to protect ourselves with all pieces of data.
Yeah. Well, Mignona, this has been fantastic. I'm glad we finally got to do something together.
Me too.
I definitely want to make some videos with you and your team around security, anything we can do in that respect. I look forward to it. So after the show, I'll be in touch, okay?
Well, I look forward to it, and thank you for having me on your show.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate it.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right, guys. That was Mignona Cote, our Chief Security Officer here at NetApp, with some good tips, some good advice. Take it to heart. I hope that some of the things that we've implemented here at NetApp to not only protect our IP, but also to look at the way that we go about things. Whew, we're halfway there. We're almost getting there. Thank you guys for hanging out again. If you're in the chat, if you're watching on YouTube, come throw your questions into the chat. We'll ask them live. If you're not watching on YouTube, if you're on NetApp.com, you can come live chat with us over on the NetApp YouTube channel. Just come join there. Or you can head into Discord. You absolutely want to come join our Discord community. It's discord.gg/NetApp. Or you can just go to netappdiscord.com and click the little join button there and get right in. All righty. Another returning member to the show coming up next. We're going to switch gears a little bit. We're going to talk about cloud.
Yeah.
Right? The next guy's one of the newest members of our A team. He's part of our CloudOps business unit. tends to work over on the side of things that we tend to hang out on, being cloudy. Mr. Shon Harris.
Nick.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for joining.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
What would you say you do here?
A little bit of every. I take the specifications from the the customers, and I give them to the engineers.
So I know you as the Spot guy.
Yep.
Right, the CloudOps guy. Yep. Anything to do with Spot, Ocean, Eco, Instacluster, all of those kinds of CloudOps kinds of things.
Yep.
That's where I sort of paint where you sit.
Yep.
That's not a side of the world I get in too much. I tend to stay more in the cloud storage side of the world, but at the same time, it's of interest to me. So I'm curious. There was a lot of announcements today made about cloud stuff. There was a lot of cloud storage stuff, which really geeked me out. But we also had Hayan come on and talk about some of the highlights there as well.
Yep.
What's some of the things you're most excited about? Any big announcements or things that you guys are making out of the Spot camp or that are big that people need to pay attention to?
You know, I think really diving into the intelligent data infrastructure aspect of the business. For a long time, we've been kind of separate but equal. Right? And it's been Spot by NetApp, Instacluster by NetApp. We saw today the rename of Instacluster to now it's NetApp Instacluster. We saw Cloud Insights become more accurate to what it actually does with data infrastructure intelligence. Man, these are all hard to keep up with. But I think it shows our commitment to the cloud. I think it shows our commitment to meeting our customers where their data is, no matter what the workload challenge is, no matter what technology they're running. NetApp has, and we saw it today, NetApp has this vision of what intelligent data infrastructure means, and it's about securing, controlling, accessibility, availability, and reliability. And that's really cool to see that story coming together on all aspects in a way that I don't think anybody else can do.
Yeah, and I look at how it ties into some of the things we talked about yesterday with Data Explorer, how we're doing classification and things like that. By the way, again, reminder in case you missed the show yesterday, data classification is now free to all NetApp customers within Blue XP. And that is going to transcend into things like Cloud Insights and your ability to provision workloads based on some of that classification. So turn it on. Yep. Costs nothing. It's free to use. If you have workloads in the cloud, if you're delivering workloads in Blue XP, regardless of what protocol you're using, you can actually just turn it on, and it'll start classifying and building a metadata store. If you remember Krish talking about it, the global metadata store. Lots of things to go over here as well. In cloud storage specifically, I was really excited to hear that there's been a growth of 20% in customers, 114% growth in the last 12 months in capacity. We finally crossed 1 exabyte, I should say. And 140% of that has been in block storage.
Did you ever see
that?
Did you
caught
ever,
me
as
off
a
guard.
sysadmin, because we're both ex-sysadmins.
Yeah.
Did you ever think that you'd see that scale of block storage?
No,
never.
I really didn't. And I'm looking down at this, going.
These numbers are staggering.
These are staggering, and these are just in the last 12 months, guys. 3 out of this is the one that always catches me off guard because I've been saying this for years about our cloud storage platforms. 3 out of 5 new customers are also new to NetApp. I remember I think it was 2021, I spoke at reInvent, and I was doing a booth presentation for someone, and I said some of the biggest customers that have never been NetApp customers found NetApp by using FSX for NetApp ONTAP in AWS.
And now we've extended that to all 3 clouds.
Exactly.
Right? We've got the ANF. And you saw the announcement about the AVS migration service. The thing they didn't mention is that now Microsoft has 5-year RIs that you can use, scale out your VMware, figure out what you're going to do long term, and then turn around and convert that into a direct compute RI at the same time.
Not only that, but then be able to use they've got the Gen AI toolkit now that will connect to OneLake in Azure using without moving data, folks. That was the key thing that I don't think was emphasized enough. You're just attaching OneLake to your Azure NetApp Files volumes. And I think that is crazy that we can do that now.
That's crazy, but I think it also shows how we're bringing the portfolio together. We're bringing that orchestration for your containers. We're bringing that automation for your virtual machines. We're handling your data at scale in a way that nobody else can. And that was so cool to watch. And for as sunny and hot as it is outside, it's a cloudy day here at the MGM Grand. I was reading, before I came up, I wanted to say I was reading kind of the live chat, and there was a comment in there that this post keynote live stream is really redefining how our customers get information too, because they're like, Nick is breaking the cloud down so effortlessly.
Yeah.
And it's so refreshing to hear simple explanations of what people think are complicated.
Yeah.
And NetApp has taken cloud operations, on-prem operations, and made them simple. And we saw that with that 1-minute demo of standing up a new storage rig.
Yeah.
And it was just awesome to see how customer focused we are and where our technology is heading and how we are the leader in all things cloud and all things on-prem.
It's really been a focus of Drew and I over the last, I'd say 3 years specifically, to make sure that we're meeting people where they are.
Yep.
And that's sort of the community focus. We took a chance on Discord. It's paid off.
Oh, yeah.
We see a lot of big potential in future there, kind of becoming the hub of the wheel of things. But this show, as it's still in its infancy. It's not even 2 years old yet. We're not even, I think we're on 38 episodes or something like that. But I look at it as it's a vehicle to deliver information directly to the customers. And if you look at something like a keynote the last 2 days, they're extremely heavily scripted and produced productions for the right reasons, right? Because there are these big moving pieces. Having casual conversations like this with and bringing NetApp people directly to the end users via these community platforms is so valuable. And
I mean, we just had the CISO of the company sitting down with you and talking about hacking in Paris and John the Ripper, and I'm like,
it's fantastic.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
How do I
want to talk to her about that for an hour.
Right. We could sit here and interview her just about security stuff, right? Like, we're both from that background. We just happen to take two different cloud paths.
Yeah. One other thing I want to highlight here, we talked about it for A&F, but the Gen AI toolkit, I need to get Mike Oglesby back on here. Mike, I'm sorry I didn't get you on the lineup, but we'll see if we can sneak you in. I mentioned Azure OneLake. Not only that, but we've also got it for GCP with Vertex and BigQuery.
And DGX, if you're an NVIDIA customer,
and
right? And
that ties right into the agent builder stuff for low-code, no-code development. Excuse me. And in my head, I'm going, could I chatbot the build using GCNV? This whole thing could be automated using Google Cloud NetApp Volumes or Azure NetApp Files or some of the stuff we're doing with Bedrock and AWS with FSxN. It's, guys, you thought we were done just by standing up a sort of virtual storage system, first-party storage service. That was the first step. Now we're getting to the meat. And this is where things really start to become important. So take all of that I just said and then stick it into BlueXP, where you can also connect it to your on-prem storage systems.
Common namespace across clouds.
As Chris said yesterday and today, the global metadata namespace that we're putting together with that, and then you can use Data Explorer in BlueXP to be able to look at all of your data footprint across clouds and on-prem.
It's going to change.
This is phase 2, guys. Like, we were updating all the storage systems. We implemented all of those first-party storage solutions going all the way back to 2016. It's been 7 years, 8 years now almost. We got all that done. Now we're going into phase 2. Now things are getting serious, because now we're bringing workload delivery. Now we're bringing efficiency, all of the things that you can deliver now.
And helping you manage it at scale.
Yeah.
Right? Cost is the hardest thing about the cloud to manage. Ask any C-level. What's your biggest problem? How do I manage my cloud cost? We give you the observability into your cloud. We give you the observability into your infrastructure, because now you can do that troubleshooting and go end to end and figure out where your bottlenecks are. And we can do ransomware protection, right? We're bringing the next generation of AI to market.
So to validate that point, we even got the kind of mic drop moment from Samit from Google Cloud, who said Google Cloud NetApp Volumes will now have first priority to Vertex AI. Meaning, when you go in to connect storage to it, the first option you're going to see to choose from there is Google Cloud NetApp Volumes.
And why would you choose anything else?
Why would they do that? I don't know.
Because it's cost efficient too, right? Like, I think
performance, cost, all of those things. This all matters, and I think ultimately, when you take everything we're talking about there, and then you tie it into workloads with things that we're doing in our CloudOps portfolio.
It's not CloudOps anymore. We got renamed. It's
we did.
Intelligent Infrastructure Services.
Oh. I did. Did I miss that in the keynote today?
Yeah, you did.
Oh, okay. I was busy prepping.
That's how big this keynote was.
Yeah.
When was the last time cloud has been this heavily prevalent at a storage conference?
2018, probably.
2018, when you first bought Spot, when we were thinking about InstaCluster. And you look at how these products have grown and how they've adapted to the changing market. That next generation of Gen AI and machine learning and RAG, you're going to need that orchestration, and we can help you do it at scale. And it's just so cool to watch how these products evolve from behind the scenes and then see how our customers use it, like DreamWorks today.
Yeah. Tell me a story about one of the coolest things that you've seen a customer do over the last year.
Oh, the coolest thing.
I'm gonna throw you a curveball. What's one of your favorite like side story things that you've seen a customer leverage, whether it's any of the Spot portfolio or some of our cloud storage or Gen AI or anything like that? What are some of the things that you're seeing?
The DreamWorks, the way we've highlighted our partnership with DreamWorks comes to mind right up because it was in the keynote today. But you don't realize digital animation in those films, how much data they take to process and storage. Just hearing about that at scale and then watching companies ingest IoT data and orchestrate it around. There's a customer that uses different aspects of the NetApp portfolio, but they use it to ingest industrial sensor data and then run analytics on it so they can predict failures on industrial sensors. Then you know when your stuff's going out, right? It's all the stuff that Watson was trying to do at IBM a few years ago, and they had the elevator commercial. And watching that now come into reality because we put that AI, and AI has moved so far in the last 5 years since they released that campaign. And then watching NetApp be a partner in how you store that data and how fast that data moves, it's just amazing.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I'll throw one in there. I won't name the name. There's a company that all they do is make catalytic converters. Now, catalytic converter is part of your exhaust system on your car. Doesn't sound real exciting, right? However, what goes into a catalytic converter? There's a piece of honeycomb that's in there that has to be the right spec size, but what is in that honeycomb that makes it a catalytic converter? Do you know?
All the metals.
Platinum. Precious metals,
all
right?
All the precious metals.
There's a slurry, the platinum slurry that has to get dipped in, right? This all used to get done and assembled and managed by hand. And they've now gotten it so efficient using the cloud, using IoT, tens of thousands of sensor generating sensor data. They're now to the point where they're spending more on infrastructure to support the manufacturing line and the safety and security of that platinum stuff, because it's very, very expensive, rare, precious metal, right? To keep all of that in check. They're now spending more on that infrastructure than they are their traditional IT infrastructure. Wild. So that's something that I had heard about recently that's really foundational for me.
And you know, the other thing that sticks out is last year at Insight, I talked to the Aston Martin team about how they use NetApp and just kind of got into that. Because I'm a cloud, I do cloud stuff now, but I'm an old school storage guy. And when they were talking about how much data each car generates. And then getting to nerd out on that and then watching how it's grown as F1 has taken off, as it's come to America. We see it in Las Vegas in November. All that data that's generated, stored on NetApp so that they can, on NetApp infrastructure, so they can predict what's going to happen and train better. It's just fascinating to watch how this data is being transformed and transforming how people do their business.
We had Matt Watts on to close out last night, and he did that. He was telling us about his episode of The Futurist, where they use the Aston Martin F1 team. He told me one funny thing. I don't know if you knew this. They can't start the car without their FlexPod.
No, I did not know that.
Because of all of the sensors and the data and everything on there, they have to have it dialed in just right to be able to start the car. That is insane to me that we've gotten to that point in infrastructure and data and management and everything. You can't start an F1 car without are we going to have to start keeping FlexPods in our cars now? Just our little, the half racks?
It's the next battery pack, right?
Right. Well, Shon, this has been fantastic, man.
Nick, always a pleasure to sit down and join with you and work with you and get a couple minutes to just wrap and nerd out for a bit.
Yeah, I love doing this. Thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Talk soon.
All righty. Well, I mentioned something a few minutes ago when I was talking about cloud with Shon there, and it's something we need to spend some more time on. Remember I told you about the whole thing where data classification was now free to all customers? Well, just to riff on it a little bit more while our next guest is getting set up here, we made an acquisition back in 2020 during the pandemic. And it was for a little company and we went through several iterations of it. You might have heard it called data sense and things like that. What we realized is that it was more valuable to us to build it in natively as an addition or as a feature to other things that we were doing, as opposed to just selling it as some standalone product that you could buy. But for data classification and things like that, I think it's important that we spend some time on that during this second half of the session while we talk about cloud, CloudOps, and cloud storage. So I wanted to bring up one of our A-Team members. He's been a long-time A-Team member. Friend of mine, friend of the show, Mr. Paul Stringfellow, a.k.a. Stringy.
Hey, Nick, how you doing?
How you doing, Paul? It's good to see you, man.
Yeah, no, I'm good, man. It's hey, this is quite a setup you've got here.
We've done well with what we could.
You're bezel heavy, which is important, I think.
Well, we could not have day 2 at Insight all about the hardware, and I'll give you a couple of seconds to reflect as well. The last 2 years have been pretty impressive with the refresh that we've done. We've gotten to this kind of stasis point now, comfort level. Everything's refreshed. Everything's up to date. One or two things still stand out in my mind that we still got to get, but we'll get there. Where are you at with the hardware systems, where they're at today? Do you like where things are at? Are you feeling good about where the updates have come?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think it's a good question. I think so. There's been a good focus on things like capacity flash. I think that's been an important part. It's making that idea of high-capacity flash, it's making it affordable, it's making it usable. The work I do, I work a lot with kind of mid-enterprise customers, and I think it's really easy for vendors to get excited by the enterprise, the guys who are coming along and buying petabytes and petabytes. But there's a massive market for people buying tens of terabytes, so 40, 50 terabytes of storage. They need an in, and they want to do it with flash. There's loads of reasons they want to do it with flash.
Yeah.
That might well be... it's about capacity, it's about speed, but it's also about sustainability. It's about the energy costs of running it with flash. So there's loads of great stuff there. So yeah, it's nice to see that hybrid systems have still got a place. I think there's still cases for that. We're starting to see really interesting moves around using ONTAP as kind of a data, so disk-based systems as a tier for flash in a flash pool. Yeah, great model. So
it's like that fast bezel sitting right in front of you.
Like I was paying attention.
Yeah.
So that kind of stuff's great, and it's doing a really good job. It's interesting. We're just having a conversation off air with a couple of guys here about customer experience. A big part of customer experience is recognizing your customers are at different places, and your customers need different things. We can't just all run around saying, actually, what our customers need are massive, many petabytes.
Yeah.
There was some stuff this morning about the NVIDIA solution.
Yeah.
Well, not all of our customers need NVIDIA. They're not all doing AI on-prem. They just want to have somewhere to keep the data that's secure, that understands the data. They can back it up. They can DR it off to other sites. They need to be able to do that. So, but you can only do that by keeping your hardware refreshed and up to date, because it needs performance, it needs scale. And we can't still be running systems we're running 7 or 8 years. It's like running a cell phone that's 7 or 8 years old. Nothing stops. I know, as somebody who's just changed a 7-year-old smartphone, you forget.
7?
Yeah, man, you forget how bad it is.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. You think it works until you realize it didn't.
I'm still on a iPhone 13, and I keep getting the peer pressure poke.
Yeah.
Yeah, why haven't you upgraded yet?
Yeah, but
I don't need to. It's fast enough. It's fine.
Yeah, you're mainly getting the peer pressure of Apple telling you it's about time you had whatever we're up to.
Our community manager likes to rib me a little bit too, because he has to be the first one in line to get the newest phone every year. But anyway, I wanted to talk to you today. I was just discussing cloud with Shon.
Yep.
And when we talked before the show, you mentioned classification. BlueXP classification was something that you were really sort of passionate about, and excited about. I have mentioned several times, both yesterday and today, that it is free to all NetApp customers that are using BlueXP. Tell me your take on it. Tell me why are you so passionate about it? What do you think it's going to be? What's so game changing about it?
Yeah, so good question. So I think let me apply a little bit of context. So, so the work that I do most of the time now is around data strategy. So it's a lot of work around things like security, how we're going to run our data, and big parts of that are things like governance, it's understanding what the data is, it's security. So these are big parts of understanding your modern data data footprints. We talked before about hardware refresh and understanding the kind of hardware you need inside of an organization. You can't do that if you don't understand what your data looks like to start with. So for those who maybe don't know, so data classification, as BlueXP data classification that we've got today, was Cloud Data Sense. That came from a NetApp acquisition maybe 5-6 years ago.
It's 2020, yeah.
Yeah, so, and the reason that NetApp did that, and actually bought a really smart product at the time, was because what we were seeing was this kind of real big uptake around the world of things like GDPR, California Data Protection Act, these kind of data protection acts that were suddenly putting a real focus on businesses to say, you need to get your data house together. You need to understand what data you have, how you're using it, what information you hold about people. So this drove a real interest in these kind of tools. And it started to change the way that people thought about the data and the information that they held. And it was no longer acceptable for businesses to have that data. And because bearing in mind it's information about me and you that a lot of these companies hold, where you're not allowed to hold that information if you're not going to treat it seriously. If all you're going to do is put it in open repositories that the world and his mates, as we like to say, would come along and be able to read, because we wouldn't do that with our information. Why would somebody else do it? So, but you can't build that kind of protection and security without understanding the data, and that's where data classification is so important. It was funny though when you said to me about coming on to talk about that. The first thing I thought was, nobody will want to hear about this because it's not AI. It's just not cool enough.
We talked about AI a lot yesterday, but
really?
I think that's completely... We're never going to talk enough about AI. There's so many to cover. But I think we made the point yesterday as well, exactly where you're going, that I always say no data, no AI.
Yep.
But I think you could even take that further and say, if you don't know the data that you're working with, we spent a lot of time yesterday talking about curation and being a librarian and a custodian of your data.
Yep.
So that when you do get classification and you do have all of that metadata available, then you can do something extremely valuable, extremely rewarding with that data using tools that are driven by, whether it's generative, or whether it's RAG, or whether it's these Nemo integrations and things like that. Like, I look at this, regardless of what the AI solution is, you can't do that properly, accurately, or well without some kind of curation that's ongoing.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. And I was saying before about kind of what drove my interest in this area was this kind of the rise of data security frameworks. So GDPR for me, based in Europe. But what's driving this kind of second wave of interest in this is exactly the things you've just talked about. You're absolutely right. No data, no AI. We're at a conference here where we've been real AI heavy. That's no surprise. Every tech conversation I have with any vendor, AI is going to play a part of that, and rightly so. There's so many use cases around how we can use. And when we talk about AI, we're normally talking about generative AI right now. Large language models. So things like the ability to use natural language query, that kind of thing, to extrapolate further insight and information. But none of that happens if the data set, as you were just saying, if the data set that's getting fed into those engines is garbage. IT's long had a phrase, me and you have been around long enough to know garbage in, garbage out.
Yep.
All AI does is garbage in, garbage out so much quicker and at so much larger a scale. More garbage out,
Yeah.
And so if we're not curating the right kind of data, when we haven't got that information, and that's where Blue XP classification in kind of NetApp's terms, but that's why it's so important, and it's driving this kind of second wave of interest in this, because businesses are starting to realize two things, I think. One is, if we're going to use these kind of Gen AI models, we can only use those models if the data that we're feeding into them is good, it's relevant, it's current.
Yeah.
We've seen use cases where non-current data has got organizations into trouble because they've got chatbots working off old data, giving incorrect answers and finding themselves in court. There's examples of that over the last couple of years. So that's important. But you've got this other side of it, which is, what are we letting our Gen AI models look at? So if you look at something like Microsoft Copilot, people are looking at Microsoft Copilot, turning it on in their organizations, and all of a sudden going, whoa, what's Copilot looking at? And understanding what Copilot is looking at. And that's, so we saw a great example actually in the keynote yesterday here of Data Explorer.
Yeah.
So part of Blue XP, and I'm fascinated with Blue XP coming really central to everything NetApp seemed to be doing. But what was really interesting with that was the ability that if you've got your data sets managed by Blue XP, you can now do a natural language query to say, tell me a bunch of stuff about the information I've got. That's real cool. Doesn't happen if we don't classify the data in the first place. So, maybe that's probably why I'm passionate about it.
This is only getting more and more important. So, at the risk of repeating myself to the audience, I'll say it. 20% growth in customers, 114% growth in total cloud storage. We've exceeded an exabyte, and 3 out of 5 new customers are new to NetApp. This is all in the cloud. And I think this is where this becomes really foundational, because a lot of this data here's the crazy part that's a bit of a mind job. A large percentage of this data that's new and the growth is generated by AI.
Yep.
The very thing that we're trying to contain and keep our hands around and make sure that it doesn't go crazy on us. But at the same time, if it's generating junk data off of junk data, we're just compounding an already existing issue. So it becomes even more important that if you're going to do a solution like RAG, if you're going to leverage your own internal existing data sets, take the time to clean it up first.
Yep.
Do some housekeeping, right? Do you really want it talking about stuff from referencing stuff from 1998? Maybe you do. Maybe you don't. I don't know.
Well, if we were doing that, we would have been talking about how we just refreshed to a FAS 270.
Right.
There's one for the kids.
Right. Well, I don't know if it's here this year, but we brought the FAS 400, the OG one, last year.
Wow.
We found it in the archives. It's like the Ark of the Covenant. We dug it out of the warehouse, right? I don't know. Haven't even got to walk the show floor over there to see if it made it back this year, but to be determined, I suppose. We were actually going to try and fire that thing up. Fun little side fact. Maybe we'll try and do that in a video sometime. Paul, what are some of the things above and beyond classification and some of the new hardware models that have stood out to you? Obviously, the AI stuff you mentioned before, but anything else that you're really keeping an eye on in the industry as a whole that has really piqued your interest above and beyond AI?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of my roles. I do some kind of broader work looking at the industry in general. And a lot of the work I've been doing has been around kind of human and data centric security. So a lot of the security conversation here has been really interesting. Yep. I think it's, there's some conversation this morning in the keynote about kind of the ransomware protection that sits on top of ONTAP. And while, again, there was a little bit of an allusion to AI in terms of using that to make it more accurate, that's an important part of how AI is getting used in security. But things like that, security being a foundational level. NetApp have been using this term. I think it's the most secure storage in the market, a phrase similar to that. Sorry for the marketing guys, whatever your phrase really is.
Oh, I mean, we didn't say that. The NSA said that.
So, well, that's, whatever the NSA says must be good. Who are we to argue?
Right.
But that kind of thing's really important because the conversations I have with customers are around the security of my data, that information that I'm holding. We see increasingly how customers of those businesses, so my customers, it's their customers asking them, hey, before I give you business, what are you doing around security? So I think that's a really interesting part of what, and it's interesting to see how NetApp are building that into their kind of day-to-day activity and have taken it really seriously. It's a part of ONTAP, it's a part of BlueXP. And beyond AI, I mean, I kind of touched on this earlier on, that it's been really interesting for me to look at the way that BlueXP is becoming so central to everything NetApp's doing. I sat in some stuff yesterday where they were talking about some of the capabilities of Active IQ going into BlueXP, the ability to push out ONTAP updates from BlueXP. Some of these kind of things are things that, when we've been around NetApp as long as we have, these are things that you're thinking, wouldn't it be great if we could do that? And suddenly you're looking at the platform and going, actually, that's great. We can start to do that kind of thing. So that's really interesting to me. That kind of, because I think when we're working with as much data as we are across such wide infrastructures in so many locations, NetApp can put data absolutely anywhere, on-prem, in the cloud, we can do all of those things. We need tools that can scale in the same way that our storage can scale. And actually, on-prem tools aren't the answer to that. Customers don't want on-prem tools. They want SaaS tools. They want SaaS management platforms. That's something else that I'm seeing in the work when I look across the security industry. Actually, people want SaaS solutions because it's SaaS infrastructure a lot of the time they're looking after, but they just don't want the pain of putting stuff on-prem, and they don't want to have to manage environments because they've got 60 other environments they're already managing. So, so I think that's really struck with me so far, is that kind of BlueXP core to everything. We talked about how data classification is part of that, but so many other things are as well. So I'm fascinated to see how that's going to kind of develop out as we go.
Yeah, and I think it really plays into a big way that we as Americans might not be exposed to as much because we don't have near the state level, border level regulations that you do, similar to like in Europe, where every country has its own rules around sovereignty, what can and can go out, all that stuff. Where does it have to be located? Like, imagine, guys, for those of us in the States, imagine if every state and the borders of that state had their own data that couldn't leave those borders and had to be stored it would be a nightmare for us to deal with, especially with 50 of them. not to mention the 20 or so countries that are in Europe. So I look at it as it's not something we have to deal with as much over here unless you're an international company like NetApp. But at the same time, I think it really can influence how we can help the rest of the world and really centrally manage where that data is going with things like classification.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's absolutely essential to that, because I think again, if you don't know what the data is and where you've got it, how do you know that you're not breaking?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, classification, a huge driver has been regulatory compliance, and having that just baked in as as people know, this is now, if you're a NetApp customer, Blue XP classification is just a thing that you've now got. So to be able to have that ability, and the reality of it is, might not, in some instances, it perhaps doesn't give you all the things that you need to be able to do. But if you're not doing anything and you've just got that baked, it's like with the ransomware stuff. That's not a ransomware prevention strategy in itself. But the fact that you've got that baked into ONTAP, solves a huge problem for people, and it becomes part of your strategy. There's a great example of how extending integration with SIEM platforms, was shown on this main stage today. Again, absolutely crucial, because we've got so many systems. What you don't want as an organization is to have 17 different places to manage these things. You want it in one place where you can orchestrate your playbooks, you can build in your responses, and that gives you consistency and actually kind of bouncing around security and classification. Big part of that is consistency. The example you were giving before, consistent approach to where I put my data, where it needs to be located, because I've got data sovereignty, data locality requirements. I need to make sure that the data I hold only lives in the places it needs to be. It only gets seen by the people and the AI engines, and it needs to be able to see it. So, but you can't do any of this stuff. You can't secure and govern what you don't know.
That's the unknown unknowns.
Yeah.
It's the phrase I like to use, because you don't know you have a problem till you have a problem.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that classification and even generative AI and certain RAG solutions could help solve is some of those unknown unknowns that any company with any kind of legacy of data might have, being able to scan for all that stuff. Stringy, this has been great, man. I really appreciate you stopping by. I look forward to working with you some more, and I hope we can have you on again at some point.
Yeah, hey, love to, and thanks for having me on. Appreciate your time, Nick. It's been good to see you.
Thank you, Paul. All right, closing things out with us today, one of my teammates, one of my good friends, one of my colleagues. I love working with this lady. She's fantastic. We haven't talked too much about how generative AI is being used in the cloud specifically. How does this affect developers? How does this affect the way that people create applications, manage applications, do any kind of work in Git or any of that kind of stuff? So I wanted to bring her up here today to talk about some of the things that happen within DevOps, specifically around generative AI and specifically in the cloud. She's one of my teammates. I love her to death. Mekka Williams.
Hey,
thank you so much.
Hey, Nick.
Welcome aboard.
Good to see you. This is cute.
You like it?
I love it.
Is your hair purple or is that the light?
That's the light.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if you got a hold of Phoebe and your girls were coloring hair.
I should have. That would have been awesome.
It looks good on you, actually.
Thank you. I might have to do that.
Tell me about, so you have sort of taken on a bit of a charter over the last year or so that seems to be leaning towards DevOps, cloud, and generative AI. Can you give us an idea of what you and your team are kind of focusing on right now?
Yeah. So I'm excited about the new role, actually, and we're calling ourselves Innovation and Solutions. And we are super interested in developing solutions around generative AI in the cloud to start with, right? Everything is hybrid cloud, but leveraging all of the amazing capabilities that are emerging in the hyperscaler spaces. And what we're seeing is this parallel in how DevOps emerged and how it changed the way folks approach software development, leveraging services in the cloud. We're kind of seeing that as a parallel. And then there's also this interesting user that emerges in the generative AI space, right? So you'll hear people talk about builder versus buyer and how to target and build solutions based on where customers are, where their AI maturity is, whether or not they want to buy something off the shelf and plug it into their data, or they're interested in building their own applications. So we're really focused right now on understanding customer problems and how they're leveraging these services, and more importantly, how to make it easy for them to consume NetApp storage and develop a good data management strategy, because that is maybe not that intuitive when you approach AI and generative AI, how important it is to have good data management strategy, and then adding the automation to make this really easy for them to do. These solutions are complicated, and we want them to not have to struggle with it, right?
Yeah. I look at tools like the various things like Vertex in Google Cloud, at Bedrock in AWS, OneLake, and what was the other one I'm thinking? Yeah, OneLake. I'm trying to see like where this is something I really want to get my head around too, because I don't feel like I have a firm grasp of it. What are some practical use cases where people can put Gen AI to work for them using some of these builder tools or the buyer tools? But a lot of them are already kind of in place for them. And I think the trick for us is really just connecting the dots between this, helping the users that are storing the data already with us kind of make that connection between the various services that are in the cloud providers to leverage Gen AI to do some of this work for them once they have it connected. I'm curious how you see that playing out in like a practical sense. Is this something that users are going to be able to do themselves? Do they need to hire professionals to do this? Is this a training issue that we run into?
So yes to everything, actually.
Okay.
so things like Amazon Q, Microsoft Copilot, those are more geared towards the buyer, right? This is a solution, this is a product and a solution where you can kind of plug your data in, connect your data in, right? The hyperscalers have storage that is readily available, and you can just start to interact with these. These are going to be your basic use cases like chat. How do I connect my data in, and I just want a chatbot that's talking to my data instead of the general purpose data available in the pre-trained LLMs that are connected to the services, right? Or Q&A, or search even, right? These are very common use cases. You can leverage the applications. Those are generative AI applications that are available and easily connect your data in. But if you want to do something more creative and innovative, or you want to, your data is distributed and it's diverse and it's not just in one cloud, or you don't want to move all your data to where the application is running, then the problem gets a little bit trickier, right? And you may have to build just to do that. And training and skill set that's available is difficult, and that's why you see more of this enablement emerging. That's kind of our sweet spot too. That's what we're focused on as well. So we want to democratize more of what users, customers can do themselves with their own data without requiring them to copy it out several times. You heard in the keynote, right? I think that was yesterday, where they talked about how many times in a simple pipeline and workflow data was copied out, how much time that takes to continually copy out data. So this concept of bringing AI to your data, that is also part of the work that we're doing. Even if you're leveraging generative AI managed services from a cloud provider, we still want to make that easy for you. So basic chat QA search with something like a ready-made service like a Copilot or a Q. But when you get into the Vertex AI and the agent building and actually taking the responses from the generative AI transaction and chaining it together with other generative AI workflows, now you're doing cool and creative things, and that's what we're really interested in extending.
That's fantastic. So what's the state of tooling around that, I guess, is where my head goes, is because, sure, we can throw data around, we can be smart about the data itself, but when there's the middleware element to this that I always get sort of hung up in is, do companies have to go out and like sort of re-architect their middleware stack to like take advantage of some of this, or are there tools available to do this kind of stuff already?
So the cool thing is that everyone's smart and API minded now, and you'll see a lot of tools that are offering endpoints. And so you can make a lot of calls via endpoints. Jerome Roustan gave a great talk today about how NetApp Engineering, or yesterday, about how NetApp Engineering is doing what's called function calling within generative AI workflows and putting these bots together, and then they're calling each other. So they've done this cool thing where individual teams that were interested in specific generative AI functionality created their bots and then made them functionally callable. So you could just call the functions, right? You don't have to re-architect anything. This is how we do software development anyway, right? We just either call functions, or I know that the Gen AI Toolkit is working on making endpoints available for different functionality. So even if you don't want to use the UI front end, you have URL endpoints available to you, and then you just call them like you would call a function. So no, I don't envision folks would have to re-architect anything, but they do have to have a different mindset. They have to think about, maybe I'm not just calling a function, I'm calling a function that's not owned by me. It's out at a service somewhere, and there's generative AI behind that. But in the end, as developers, if it does what I want it to and it's safe, what do I care? Actually, reusability is the name of the game. That's our goal. So having generative AI as an option for a function call, that's cool. We're in the future.
Yeah. I think that's really the power, almost the hidden virtue that a lot of people haven't recognized of the cloud. If I look at AWS, for example, there are hundreds of tools and apps and things that it's a literal app store of anything you could possibly want to do with a data set. And manipulate it or twist it or report on it or do anything you want to with that data set, with all of those different tools. And then you tie it to things like SageMaker or Bedrock that are also native to AWS to do other things to that same data set. Same thing's true in Google Cloud, Vertex and BigQuery. Same thing's true with OneLake in Azure and Azure NetApp Files. And like, you've got all of these pieces now. I feel like we've gotten to the point now, everything's built. We need to start talking solutions. Where do you stand on... I feel like we've completed the crest, the climb. We're there. We need to start talking about how people can like put this stuff into practical use on a day-to-day basis. And that's where I start to get hung up a little bit.
So this is a never-ending battle between...
Solutions versus products,
Solutions versus product. This is only the 10th time this has come up at Insight. We've had so many conversations about this, and I think this is true. You know, I worked in engineering a long time, and you are very, target-based in engineering, right? You deliver, even at a more granular level, you deliver features. You deliver your part of the product, right? And so one great thing for me about making the transition to this side of the business is actually being able to see how customers use our products. And you don't have that purview when you're working on features and software development so much, unless you seek it out, right? And so I lean more solutions, surprise, surprise, that we sell solutions, right? Our products alone can't fill in those gaps of how our customers make use of the great technologies that we've built up and folded into our wonderful products, right? And they have to serve each other, right? We have to have really good communications between the two. I don't want to miss this point, though, because when you said Vertex AI, that actually was one of my favorite things about the keynote today, that Samit mentioned in the keynote that Vertex AI is now honoring GCMV as a first-party storage resource.
A selection in the dropdown.
My chat exploded over that. That is super exciting for us, and I'm so excited because in this space of developing solutions and building out solutions to leverage Vertex AI, this is a big deal. This is the actual bringing AI to your data, and you don't have to move it wherever it is. It's on NetApp. And we, NetApp, make it really easy to move your data within the hybrid ecosystem as long as it's using ONTAP underneath the cover. So this is huge for us. I envision, even for my team directly, that this is going to set our innovation gears into hyperdrive. I'm super excited about that announcement.
I love that, and I relate it back to, not to oversimplify it, but to an extent it's like attaching a database. You're not really moving that data. You're just giving it access to that data.
Yeah.
And that's what I see a lot when Chris was talking about data classification, building a global metadata namespace. And then we had Samit talking about how we were going to have it Vertex and BigQuery connect directly to GCNV. I know Mickey's been working on some Bedrock stuff on your team. There's all kinds of stuff that's coming. And I think that is where this really points ultimately is, cool, we've got all the tools. Now let's build some solutions like some of the stuff that Mickey's doing. If you get a chance and you're here at the show, go see Mickey's session on what they're doing with Bedrock. It's really cool. I think they've got a demo here. Do you know if they have a demo here in the booth?
We have several.
We have several demos.
We have lots of good demos
here in the booth.
Yeah.
Mekka, this has been a real pleasure. I love chatting with you. I feel like we don't get to hang out and chat enough about some of the stuff that you and your team are doing. Let's change that. Let's do this more often.
I am happy to come by. We're doing such exciting stuff,
Yeah.
and I love the show and what you're doing, sir. I miss you, and I love what you're doing here.
Wait, hang on. Is it your birthday today?
It is my birthday today.
We're closing the show out with a birthday, folks. Happy birthday, Mekka.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much.
I hope you enjoy the rest of the show. I really appreciate you stopping by, and we'll do this again soon.
I'll be right at the AI booth, so folks come
There
by
you go.
and see me if you're here.
All right, folks. Well, we made it. We made it through day 2. I'm going to show you one more time. Give you a little promo, a little sneak peek for those of you still hanging around. Yep, right side up. The new Hardware Universe poster is available right now. If you're here at the show, you can get one in the expo. Come see me. I'll give you this one. If you're not at the show, if you weren't able to make it, you can grab these off of the merch store, off the NetApp Gear store, for a few bucks, and they'll mail it directly to you. Closing things out today, this has been a hard day to get my head around because there's been so much, and I still need to go back and watch all of that detail that Krish went into on the disaggregated storage and where that whole thing is going. I think we need to have some deeper conversations about that sort of stuff. They held out on us. I didn't get to hear any of that before the show, but we'll address that later. Today we talked about ASA, the new version of ASA, the 70, the 90, right, and the 1K. We've got new FAS systems, the FAS 70, the FAS 90. We've got the new A series that we launched back in May. All kinds of systems coming out. We've also got some crazy numbers coming out of cloud storage, crazy new abilities from all 3 of the hyperscaler partners being able to do that stuff. We've done testing on autonomous ransomware protection with 100% precision and 99% recall. That's just unheard of, guys. Nobody else in the industry can do that kind of stuff. That is nearly proactively projecting when you're going to get an attack. It's 1 small % away from being able to do that. So we have a lot to go over after Insight this week, just from today. So make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel. Make sure you keep all of the stuff up to date. And the best way to do it is to come join us in our Discord community. We're hitting 5,000 people this week in the Discord community of various employees, from support staff and executives to myself and our community manager, Drew Claybrook, and lots of practitioners, subject matter experts across a myriad of industries hang out in there with us every day, all day. So come join us, get in there. That's the best place to keep up with NetApp On Air and our schedule as well. We'll be back tomorrow. I think, let me look at my notes here. Looks like the keynote starts tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. and goes till about 11:30-ish Pacific time, where we'll be picking up, and we'll be right back here on NetApp On Air Snapshot, breaking down everything that was said on day 3. I know we're going to talk about a lot of the things that we couldn't get to today, some of the Keystone announcements, storage as a service. We're going to have some of our partners showing up to bring in some of their perspective to it, all kinds of good stuff, and then we'll do a full wrap-up at the end of the day tomorrow for the whole week. Thanks so much for watching us. We'll see you tomorrow. Enjoy the rest of your day. And until next time, take care.